What is going on, everyone? My name is Jason, and this is the iPhone 11 Pro Max versus the XS Max showdown. Okay, prior to September 2019, you may have been one of those people that said, you know what, to hell with money. I'm gonna go ahead and get the most expensive iPhone available. And if you did, you would have gotten your hands on this guy, the iPhone XS Max. Coming in at a starting price of around $1,200 US, for most, I'm sure it was quite an investment. But the good news is, the XS Max has really proven itself to be a great device. A masterfully refined design, premium materials all around, and a user experience at the time that was hard to beat, making most people who shelled out the dough to buy this phone pretty satisfied, myself included. But alas, with the debut of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, Apple's new flagship king, the long-term satisfaction of current XS Max owners is undoubtedly going to be put to the test. So if you're in that camp and you're wondering if you should upgrade, or if you're on the fence between both phones, thought I'd put together a comparison review to help answer the question that's likely on your mind. Is the iPhone 11 Pro Max worth it? Now before we get into the review, if you're into checking out the latest consumer tech products before you buy them, or if you're just a tech head like me, I make a video like this every single week, so make sure that you hit that subscribe button and turn on that bell icon so you can be the first to know when a new JSL review is out and you don't miss anything. And real quick, before I get to my thoughts, do you guys think that the iPhone 11 Pro Max is worth it? Especially if you already have a XS Max? Curious to get your thoughts. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. Okay, first let's talk about how these two phones stack up against each other from a physical design standpoint. Though the iPhone 11 Pro Max is an iterative upgrade from its 2018 predecessor, making majority of the look and feel of both phones virtually the same, there are some key differences. First is the finish on the back panel. Though both phones use glass, the XS Max has a glossy finish, representing more of the classic glass-on-glass design used by many flagship phones, as it feels great in the hand, and I actually feel like I get good grip on the phone with this glossy finish. But the downside here is that it's quite reflective and an extreme fingerprint magnet. Not good if you're one of those obsessive compulsives that need to have your phone clean of all smudges at all times. The iPhone 11 Pro Max, on the other hand, introduces Apple's first swing at a frosted matte finish glass back on the phone, which is way less fingerprint prone and ultra clean with the removal of the iPhone text logo at the bottom, and I have to say, it's quite impressive. The frosted glass gives the phone a more stealthy physique without making it look or feel any less premium, and I like the contrast between it and the polished stainless steel frame. It's subtle, but it makes the phone stand out in a very unique way. It is a bit more slippery in the hand, but stays a lot cleaner despite getting your fingers all over it. And though I definitely do prefer this look over the XS Max, especially in this midnight green color, this alone wouldn't be enough for me to switch over. I mean, as nice as it looks, it doesn't take away from the fact that the XS Max is still a gorgeous phone in its own right, and it's something I'm still pleased to look at and hold today. Now, one of the main reasons why folks decide to pull the trigger on the more expensive plus-size iPhones is their displays. And when comparing between the Max versions of the 11 Pro and the XS, it's like 99% the same. Both are rocking 6.5-inch OLED panels that come in at the same resolution of 2688 by 1242, making for 458 pixels per inch. Both support the wider P3 color gamut and True Tone capability. And as you can see here, they're both fantastic displays that look virtually identical to each other. The only differences are, number one, while the XS Max supports Apple's 3D touch technology, the 11 Pro does not, and utilizes haptic touch in its absence. Number two, while the XS Max has a contrast ratio of 1,000,000:1 with a max brightness of 625 nits, the 11 Pro edges it out with a 2,000,000:1 contrast ratio and a max brightness of 800 nits, which actually could be bumped up to a staggering 1,000 nits when consuming HDR content. This makes for one of the brightest displays in the market today, and it is a quote-unquote better display than the XS Max in that regard. But look, are most people going to notice the difference in day-to-day use? The answer is no. And again, to me, upgrading or choosing the 11 Pro Max over the XS for the display is not something I would do or recommend, given how similar they are. Okay, so let's talk performance. While yes, the XS Max is rocking an older processor with its A12 Bionic chip, in comparison to the Pro's A13 Bionic, Apple is pretty overkill with its processors, and the performance of the A12 is still exemplary. Navigating around the UI is still super snappy, spec-intensive activities such as gaming or taking advantage of Smart HDR is still no problem, and even with multiple software updates, the XS Max is still a freakishly fast phone. And though the 11 Pro Max will likely last longer from a future-proofing standpoint, you're not going to really see any significant improvements in speed or app performance in day-to-day use that would make it more compelling than the XS Max. Now, where you will see a meaningful difference in performance is battery life. The XS Max gives users a healthy 10.5 hours of average battery life, which is above average when comparing to other flagships out there, even the newer ones today. And while the battery life is great, the 11 Pro Max blows it and essentially all other competitors out of the water with a battery that on average gives an additional 5+ hours battery life, which makes for a significant and noticeable difference in day-to-day use. Now Apple was able to pull this off by increasing the size of the battery, mainly by removing the 3D touch that I mentioned earlier is not on the 2019 iPhones. You pair that with the class-leading efficiency of Apple's processors, and you have a battery that could very comfortably get you through the day no matter what you throw at it. And look, I'll say even power users could still be comfortable with the battery performance of the XS Max. It's still great, but the battery life on the 11 Pro Max, for lack of a better phrase, is insanely great. Now most will be fine with either choice from a day-to-day usage standpoint, but the major improvement to the 11 Pro Max's battery is something that needs to be singled out as a key difference between these two phones. And that brings us arguably to the biggest difference between the XS and the 11 Pro Max, and that's their cameras. Now let's start with the front-facing cameras, as there's not as many differences there. You are getting a better megapixel count on the 11 Pro Max, coming in at 12 megapixels instead of 7, and though it is higher, you're not going to notice much of an improvement if you're looking at most of your images that you took via your phone. Where you get the biggest difference with the front-facing cameras is the video shooting capability. While the XS Max tops out at shooting 1080p video at 30 or 60 frames per second, the 11 Pro Max can shoot 4K video in 24, 30, or 60 frames per second, which is kind of incredible for a front-facing camera. This could be a big deal for you if you're heavy on Instagram stories, Snapchat, or TikTok, as you're going to get noticeably better video quality on the new iPhone. Now as far as the back cameras are concerned, the most obvious difference is going to be the addition of a third, ultra-wide camera on the 11 Pro Max, making for 3 rear cameras total as opposed to the older model's dual camera setup. And to be honest, it's kind of a big deal. The ultra-wide angle lens is awesome for a lot of different uses, and it really enhances the overall utility of the camera suite as you have a lens for almost any occasion. I would say it's not critical in terms of having, but it's definitely a nice to have. Now when it comes to the other two lenses, there's not that big of a difference. Both come in at 12 megapixels and similar max apertures, both support portrait mode photos, but the 11 Pro Max can shoot in wide angle portraits, which is actually super nice. And though they both support Apple's Smart HDR image processing, the 11 Pro Max utilizes next generation Smart HDR and Apple's Deep Fusion. Now at the end of the day, are you going to notice a night and day difference in image quality between these two phones? And the answer is no, not most of the time. In most cases, you're going to have to really punch in to notice differences in image quality. And the good news is that both do an incredible job. Apple really stepped it up last year in terms of their computational image processing after getting bested year after year by the Pixel, and though I will say that the images coming out of the 11 Pro Max are better, the improvement is incremental and more of a fine-tuning than an in-your-face type of improvement. That being said though, there is one area of the 11 Pro Max's camera that does substantiate a jarring, undeniable improvement, and that's night photos. With the night mode available on the newer iPhones, it's able to capture images in the dark far better than those captured with the XS Max, and it's a super big difference. Though it's Apple's first time debuting this feature, they really did do a good job with it. It's well integrated into the camera app, and the low light images come out looking clean and not overly processed, and the XS Max just can't compete here. Now it may not be a make or break feature for you, but once you collectively look at all the camera upgrades that are on the 11 Pro, it makes for a much more compelling package. Now all that being said, in my opinion, if I picked up the XS Max last year, I probably wouldn't upgrade to the 11 Pro Max. Don't get me wrong, it's a great phone, and it is better than its predecessor in almost every way, but not enough to make me feel like my XS Max is an inferior phone. And I would rather be patient, save my money, and see what Apple drops in 2020, as that's the year that the iPhone will most likely go through a design overhaul, which is way more exciting than an incremental upgrade. But hey, that's just me, and I want to get your thoughts. If you guys have a XS Max, did anyone upgrade to the 11 Pro? Whether you did or didn't, let me know in the comments why you went with your decision. Okay, that's about it for this review. Don't forget to leave me a thumbs up if you guys found it useful, it really helps me out. If you guys have any questions about the XS Max or the 11 Pro Max, leave them down in the description and I'll be sure to get to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.